Man, it's so good to get away from playing From Software games, and expanding the scope of my content making by doing other things with my time. Any other year, any other month, any other day, they could have made this announcement, but no, they have to shit in my series. In celebration of this monumentous occasion, I will be ranking all Bloodborne bosses from worst to best. And if they dare decide to cancel this film, like they did every other Bloodborne project, I will devastate their chocolate starfish harder than J.K. Rowling did Harry Potter! Rules. The bosses will be ranked on difficulty, enjoyability, lore, and design. Now with all of that being said, let's get started with the first and the worst boss on our list. And that would be, to no one's surprise, the Witches of Hemwick. What do I even say about these witches that hasn't already been said? Difficulty is non-existent. They basically walk around the arena waiting to die. And the main method they use to fight back is summoning others to do the fighting for them. And the summons won't even try to get in your way. You can just walk up to the witches and they will let you kick them in the teeth. And there is nothing fun about wailing on defenseless old ladies. At least not that I know of. Their lore has something to do with collecting eyeballs and doesn't really go beyond that. My thinking is that they are working with the school of Mensis in order to create a great one, but that is a whole lot of speculation. And the design is generic as all hell. Hags look like they came straight out of Hansel and Gretel's fairy tale. Stock images looking ass witches. Next up, we have the Celestial Emissaries. Now I have a question for you. How difficult do you think it is to beat on kids? The answer may surprise you. It's not. And that's kind of tied into their lore. Children that were kidnapped and experimented on in order to become great ones. They were successful. Good on them for that. But I haven't met anyone that was having a fun time battering on this Oompa Loompa Blue Man Group amalgamate. Next up, we have Rom. Rom the Vacuous Spider. How are you so stupid that even in your title you're considered mindless? Better question, how are you holding back the Blood Moon without even knowing you're holding back the Blood Moon? That's in your lore! You clearly can't fight because the moment we start sawing your potato-shaped body into pieces, you call for backup so that you can back up. Fighting lackeys is never entertaining and your heads are so hard that you all might as well be wearing helmets. Wait! I have the perfect role for you to play.
Welcome to Jackass.
Next up, we have the Living Failures, and they are just a failed version of the Celestial Emissary, but I like them slightly more. Next up, we have Murgo's Wet Nurse, who may or may not have been created by Murgo, but definitely serves as protector and guardian. But might I just say, Murgo was really incapable of finding someone better for the job. This Wet Nurse's turning capabilities is the equivalent of the controller sensitivity of a sunfish. Also as life-threatening as a sunfish too. But, if you stand directly in front of this Wet Nurse, she might be as fearsome as a sloth. And lastly, her design is beyond my comprehension. So I'm gonna give it a 2. I was considering giving her a 0 because I couldn't perceive anything, but look at her dripping more than Bling Bling Boy, you gotta respect that. Next up, we have the One Reborn, whose lore is that the students of Mensis were having difficulty seeing what lies beyond, and with their numbers growing but insight remaining stagnant, they questioned if the method they knew of was the only way to line their brain with eyes. And so started the experiments. They used the gifts given to them by the Witches of Hemwick, tore open a fellow classmate's skull, and attached eyes to his brain to no avail. But the students of Mensis had a thought. What if one mind lined with eyes simply wasn't enough? And as the thought had consumed them, so did the failed experiment. But is any of what I just said true?
Oh, the deception! The betrayal!
His enjoyability is rather low since getting kicked in the face is extremely annoying. Thankfully that's made up for with his lack of difficulty, which makes him slightly more tolerable. Not by much. Damn near not at all. I still remember my fist run. I also really like his design. But I am a little surprised that after so many years, he still found a way to pack more people in.
Yeah, you're done! You're done!
Next up, we have Dark Beast Parl, whose lore is that he is being researched. That isn't even a joke. I do find it somewhat interesting that he was around before the Beast Scourge, but that's like trying to separate the shit from the turds. At this point we're nitpicking. He's pretty quick and his difficulty is rather respectable, but I haven't met anyone to this day that hasn't complained about his hitbox radius and how they are unable to kick this puppy. And the design of an electrified werewolf skeleton is pretty metal. Until you see it. Next up, we have the Shadows of Yarna. Can someone get these Dementors out of my face? Their lore is that they are looking for the One Ring to rule them all. Wait, no, that's for a different project they're working on. This is Bloodborne. And their lore here in Bloodborne is that they are drawn to the Queen in order to serve and protect her. But these guys just happen to get corrupted by the Forbidden Woods. So basically just a group of simps. They aren't difficult to fight one-on-one, and they know this, so just like every other contract they wrote before signing on, they made sure that one of the clauses stated that they ride together, and they die together. Next up, we have Mikolash, host of the Nightmare. He was a former Bergenwerth student who put a lobster cage on his head, which drove him insane. Well, technically it was the Great One Murgo that drove him insane, but he wouldn't have been driven insane if he never put the lobster cage on his head. So I'm not wrong. He runs around the arena for a while, throws some of the weakest slaps I've seen in history your way, and occasionally decides to one-shot you straight out of left field. But just by taking a look at this room, the parties he threw were wild. Next up, we have Amygdala, whose lore is that he's constantly sitting in a cuck chair just watching everything unfold. And man, I wish that was hyperbole. He leaves a lot of openings and room for you to attack, but the fight can still be pretty slow going. And depending on the weapon that you use, you can make it that much easier for yourself. And as for his design, I don't think very highly of it for a guy with a beehive on his head. Oh shit, for dozens of you that are scattered around the map, I didn't know you had this kind of potential. Next up, we have the Blood-Starved Beast. And let me just say, that shroud you're wearing made out of your own skin? Very nice. But you really should have added some designs and patterns to it. Some people are so lazy when it comes to fashion. Its lore is that it was once a person that was receiving blood healing as a part of the rituals performed by the Healing Church members, and that parts of the ritual involved getting beaten, strung up, and set on fire or some shit, I don't know. I still find him enjoyable to go up against despite his difficulty not being that high. Next up, we have the Cleric Beast. His lore is that he was once a cleric of the Healing Church, who accidentally witnessed another prominent member of the Healing Church converse with those from Canehurst Castle. But before being able to report this information back to the other members of the church, he was caught and imprisoned until the executioners began their campaign against those from Canehurst. In order for the Vilebloods to slow their newly founded pursuers, they used the cleric by forcing him to imbibe a large amount of old blood, and tossed him into Yarnum as a distraction, so that he would turn into a beast which both wouldn't raise questions and keep secrets hidden. Which is pretty solid lore if you ask me. If only I didn't make it all up. Yeah, the only part that was actually true was him consuming a large amount of old blood. Whether it was forced against his will or not, that is unknown. He isn't that difficult of a boss, but I still enjoy going up against him and his design. Sometimes simple does work best. Next up, we have the Orphan of Kos.
Hang that now! I got the rope right here!
Now please, if everyone can calm themselves and put down their pitchfork and torches before heading into my comment section, let me explain my insanity before you call me insane. He is, without a shadow of a doubt, the hardest boss in the entire game. But sometimes the fight can feel like such bullshit, and that feeling is intensified in his second phase, seeming a bit too unfair. Now we're gonna do his lore from the very beginning. He was born, stared at the moon, and fucking died. That's it. That's his entire lore. I have seen people list on their resumes that they are ambidextrous masturbators, and they have achieved more in life than the Orphan of Kos. And to those that say he created the nightmare, no he didn't. Kos created the nightmare, not her child. The only thing this orphan did was be born to a powerful parent. He is the Nepo baby of the Hunter's Nightmare. And finally we have design. If anyone thinks this SCP-106 wannabe looks good, I recommend you get your eyes checked. Until Dawn Wendigo ripoff. Next up, we have Vicar Amelia. And her lore is... hold up a moment. Ah, here it is. The non-existent lore page for me to read off of. A predecessor befell a gruesome fate whose footsteps you have to follow in. A city that can no longer be saved, and the empire once known as the Healing Church has long fallen. And when you are gone, so will the remnants of the church turn to the same ash you had so hastily spread among the townsfolk. Unable to accept the fact that she wouldn't be forgotten, but instead remembered as the one who let the church fall, Amelia decided that becoming a mindless beast was better than living to see the hopeless future that awaited her. Her difficulty, in my opinion, is just right, and she can be a pretty enjoyable boss fight. Until she heals. But undoubtedly, the best part about Amelia is her design. Now, I'm not a furry, but next up, we have the Moon Presence, and he's the reason behind the hunter's dream in its entirety. But he required someone to host that dream. Fortunately enough for the Moon Presence, he found Gehrman, who is a bit of a coward. And now the Moon Presence passes off tasks to his good little boy, who passes off tasks to us. All in all, pretty solid lore, can't find any faults with it. And the Moon Presence design is... wow. He's got style. He's got grace. He possibly has anorexia, but I like it. He isn't that difficult to fight. Half the time he's comatose, the other half he's spazzing out. It isn't anything too noteworthy. If only it wasn't for the negative taste left in my mouth from him stripping away my ability to heal. And my innocence. He used me! Next up, we have Gehrman, the first hunter. He was the first hunter, who passed on a baddie to be the boy toy of the Moon Presence. I mean, the guy self-corrected later, knowing that he lost something incredible. I just wish old Pegleg here didn't have to get pegged to learn that lesson. And now he's trapped in a dream, where he makes dolls of the girl he left behind to... comfort him. Is it weird that I like this lore despite it giving heavy ick? His design is really gross. It kinda reminds me of a pirate. And not the sexy Captain Jack Sparrow type of pirate, I'm talking about the musky, wooden teeth, hasn't showered in weeks type of pirate. You know, the kind of pirate that you can now find lurking in a basement. He is a rather difficult boss fight, but he doesn't feel too overtly bullshit. And I kinda like it. If only they got rid of one or two of his attacks, I think it would have been more fair. But hey, the guy has to vent out his rage at us choosing freedom when he couldn't, so I get it. Now I just need to vent out my rage on all those in wheelchairs. You guys understand why, right? From this point on, we will be discussing divinity. So next up, we have Marlagarius. His lore is that he was once the leader of the executioners, but now he is serving as the guard dog to ensure no one sets the Queen of Canehurst free. I also want to mention, it is stated that he discovered a vile secret within the castle, but I will touch on it a bit later. I thoroughly enjoyed this boss, but what really impresses me is that this Grand Wizard ain't too old to do the Devil's Tango. He's pretty fun, and I like the Desolate Throne Lone King vibe he's giving off. Next up, we have Lawrence, the first Vicar. His lore is that he was a former student of Willem who decided to travel to Yharnam and use the old blood to help others, which eventually led to the creation of the Healing Church. But it also led to the corruption within his mind. Lawrence initially had nothing but good intentions, but with the passing of time, he became comfortable, negligent, and forgot to fear the very blood he was giving both the people of Yharnam and himself. Lawrence had attempted to convince Willem that the old blood had an immense amount of potential that was untapped, only to be denied. After receiving such a rejection, even after becoming a former student, he was reluctant to share his idea, even to those closest to him. So he had to find himself a distant, predictable outside source, which he did. Lawrence communed with a Bergenworth scholar to steal the old blood and bring it to a place now known as Canehurst, to study its healing properties and try to form an elixir of immortality. He continued his studies on immortality with the help of his beloved Annalise. Although he was almost caught by a cleric, fortunately enough for him, they were quickly halted before they could share the information of what they learned and witnessed. And his fortune only continued to grow with the church gaining more power and the first trial immortality elixir's creation. There were even several test sites being ran in what is now called Old Yarnum. But despite all his success, the Beast Scourge was uncaring and unyielding. Yarnum was being devoured and the people pleading to be saved. So Lawrence, listening to their pleads, burned down Old Yarnum in an attempt to stop the scourge spreading further. But more importantly to him, destroying the research sites and locking Old Yarnum away so no one would know that the Old Blood was the cause of the scourge. That he was the cause of its spreading. His selfishness and cowardice was the sole reason behind his people's pain and suffering. And rather than speaking the truth and losing it all, he blamed those from Canehurst, proclaiming that their corruption of the Old Blood was the reason that their friends and neighbors were turning into mindless beasts. Lawrence still believed that he could make amends for his actions with the elixir. If he just had immortality, it wouldn't have all been for nothing. Even though Annalise had left him and would no longer share her own research on it, it wouldn't have been in vain. But as the executioners were slowly being formed, Lawrence knew that he was running out of time. He knew that they would soon discover everything as they stormed Canehurst. Everything about the research. Everything about himself. Even though he hadn't managed a single successful trial, it was now or never. Before the executioners launched their first campaign, Lawrence put all of his accumulated knowledge and made all the adjustments he could to the elixir. But with no one to trial test it, he understood what was required of him. So he consumed the vile concoction. But that was the last decision he had made with his sane mind. Or maybe he wasn't even sane by that point, for he had drank one blood vial too many, forcing him to turn into the very beast he had turned others into, forcing him to become the same mindless beast he had hunted. Alright, so you guys are probably wondering, how much of this lore did I make up? The answer is yes. Now I want to make it clear that I like the lore that Lawrence has, but that leaves me with a few questions. Why is his skull apart from his body and how is he still alive? Why does our first showing of Lawrence feel like encountering a vile blood? Why doesn't he bleed and how come he vomits lava? Was the secret that Marla Gary is guarding really the immortal queen? Why are these three cleric beast designs so similar? Not trying to say that all cleric beasts look the same. This guy is technically a cleric beast, but what is the connecting factor that makes these three have such a similar design to one another? Who does the throne next to Annalise belong to? Why is his design so shitty? Actually, scratch that last bit. He's just a flaming version of Cleric Beast. I guess it's alright. Also, he's pretty difficult if you decided not to spend some time actually learning the Cleric Beast fight. But overall, he's incredibly enjoyable to go up against every single go-around. So in the end, I think very highly of this boss. Next up, we have Father Gascoigne, who is always one step away from perfection. His lore is that he is a loving and devoted husband and father who wanted to protect his family so badly from the Beast Scourge, he killed his own wife.
Let that shit happen to me,
I'm not a mathematician, so I guess those numbers check out. But, in turn for him not being convinced by his wife's attempts to reason with him, we got a pretty sick fight as a result. You can't tell me you don't appreciate the tactical wolf landings, and the fact that he has two designs, his human and his beast form. Everything about him is on the cusp of perfection, but just missing that little bit more. Next up, we have Abritius, the daughter of the Cosmos. Her story is that her father abandoned her, and so did everybody else. Except for the church, which is tantamount to a child predator giving you candy. It isn't much of a consolation prize. In return for the church's hospitality, Abritius gave them her own blood to drive them all insane. Is it just me, or is it extremely strange to see the child as the predator in this scenario? This is a very difficult boss. Until you see it. Ugh, looping the same attack? Disgusting. But besides that, when she's not being animation locked, she's pretty fun. And her design is interesting. Very, very interesting. It's making me feel things that I didn't know I felt. Am I attracted to slugs? Next up, we have Lady Maria, and her lore is that she's interested in an incel. Do you guys think that she would still be interested in him after seeing all the objects that he made look like women who carry a striking resemblance to her? Oh yeah, and before I forget to mention, she's a vile blood that was hanging out with Lawrence in the church. And she's pretending to be dead after conducting experiments within the research hall. But she feels remorseful about it, so maybe she can change for the better. And I'm the only one who can change her. She fights by flinging her vile blood at you, and then later turning that blood into fire. Is she an allegory for STDs? Her fight is a lot of fun, but you can really knock her down a peg in difficulty with a single gunshot. Actually, you could apply that logic to basically anyone. Her design is... ooh... fine. But they should have done more for her second and third phase than just cover her sword in blood and give her aura. Make her blood spill out of her and onto the ground from the second phase onward. Set her cape or cap on fire. I get that I'm cherry picking a little, but I can't unsee the fact that they had options and chose not to follow through. And finally, taking up our number 1 spot, next up we have Ludwig the Holy Blade. So Stilgar's lore is that he's constantly glazing Paul Atreides. Oh wait a minute, wrong script. Ludwig was one of the first healing church hunters. He trained many others that followed and led many campaigns against the Beast Scourge, only to one day find himself traversing a never-ending nightmare. When Ludwig first entered the nightmare, it was strange for him, with everything seeming a little familiar and yet separate from the reality he knows it to be. As more time passed, more hunters that he trained and even those he followed began to appear one after the other. But he couldn't understand why only some of those that he trained appeared, while others never seemed to show despite an endless stretch of time passing. So he did the only thing he could. Ludwig walked, hunted beasts, and walked some more. Others had chose to join him in this endeavor, but the further he got into his travels, the more pieces of the puzzle that seemed to fall into place. And as his feet treaded through the water of the desolate hamlet, he needed not question why he was trapped in this hunter's nightmare. As the group returned back to the underground to devise a plan, some believed that this was what they deserved, while others suggested storming the hamlet once more in search for the Great One that seemed to have them in his clutches, and look for a method to free themselves. As the infighting slowly escalated from a battle of words to blows, Ludwig had already fallen apart. The endless time, the endless campaigns, the endless streams of blood, only to be confronted with the worst of his atrocities at the end. He couldn't bear the weight of it. As he plunged a blade into one of the pairs of battling hunters, he allowed himself to succumb to the bloodlust, turning a place they had considered a small refuge into a pile of corpses, into an endless stream of hunters' blood. Ludwig's last thought before transforming into the beast we see was that it was fitting the crime they had committed to others now be done onto themselves by their own hands. This guy is peak Bloodborne. I love how his style changes halfway through the fight. It is beautiful and tragic seeing this beast try to reclaim his manhood halfway through the battle. His design is so grotesque and cool, and what does that mouth do? This is one of the few bosses that I've easily spent over a dozen hours battling just because of their sheer difficulty and never getting bored with them, which is a major testament to their enjoyability. Ludwig, without a shadow of a doubt, is the greatest boss in all of Bloodborne. Now with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, that really helps out the channel. And until the next time we meet, I will be waiting patiently like the rest of you for the Bloodborne movie. Oh yeah, I don't think I actually gave my opinion on the movie. I'm excited for it. I don't think it will actually release. See ya!